Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's good, Rush Nation? We're back. It's week 11. Oh my goodness, how have we got to legs 11 already? Big man, how you doing? Hectic week in the Murf household.
Crazy week in my household. So I did send the apology when I did the Strategy Points podcast earlier that there was no waiver wires week. Some family stuff, some a few minor health things, and work life and everything has all gone a bit awry this week. So yeah, but good. It's I tell you what, I must say probably this weekend was the best weekend of football I've seen in quite some time, with 5 walk-off field goals. And then we got a 6 on Monday Night Football. So, yeah, I genuinely enjoyed this week's slate of games. Definitely felt like the league is pushing a bit more towards parity in a lot of things. I mean, if you looked at paper this week or week 10, you see 49ers Jags, you think, oh, that looks like an absolute barn burner. And that was the worst game that happened this weekend, other than maybe Cowboys Giants. That was horrific. But the rest, just phenomenal. Like some absolute, that Lions Chargers game just was one of the best games I've seen in quite some time. Absolutely. How Justin Herbert lost, it's not his fault he lost. He was phenomenal. Like, as a QB performance in a game, it's right up there as one of the best I've ever seen with some of the throws he made in that game. Some of the throws he made in that game were just, I'm not convinced there are more than 2 guys in the league that can make those throws. It was about 4 or 5 that were just absolutely ridiculous. It was just one of the best quarterback games I've ever seen from a player, and it's gutting that he lost. And this is where we talk about, like, if you're a head coach and you're on a side of the ball, and your side of the ball's not doing very well, you should probably get fired. And that's Brandon Staley. Like, he's got to go. Like, he's a defensive-minded coach. They put up. Listen, it's no real disgrace. The Lions are a good offense. They go for it a lot on 4th down, but crumbs. Like, he just did not deserve. Him and Keenan Allen did not deserve to lose that game. But then I could say the same for Amon Marseille Brown and Jared Goff. Jared Goff he wasn't as good as Justin Herbert, but yeah. What a game. If you have DAZN or NFL Plus or whatever, you have the ability to go back and watch that game. Just go back and watch that game. It is an absolute treat. It's a brilliant, brilliant game of football, especially second half. Brilliant. Couldn't have been any more entertaining if I tried.
Yeah, there was some decent endings to the football, like you said, this weekend. Capped off with the Broncos missed field goal win because of the Bills' stupidity with 12 men on the field.
Oh, I tell you what, this is where the worst in football comes out, right? Because you know who the 12th man was, don't you?
No.
Damar Hamlin.
Oh, God.
So some Bills fan posted like a meme basically saying it was a GIF, but effectively insinuating that the Bills were doing better off if he'd actually died. And that was like, that is dark. That is as dark as it gets for humor or reality or whatever. Like, I was like, oof, that's a bit strong. But yeah, that was that was the turning point, I suppose. But yeah, great week. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad that we get to see some great games. And yeah, this week's slate looks pretty good as well. The Buccaneers are on Sky, so no doubt they're going to get absolutely hammered like they were the last time they were on Sky. I'm not looking forward to this week, so here we go.
Yeah, I've got a stat for you, a factoid that I saw today that I think you'll appreciate. It's college football related, but do you know that this season the Tennessee Volunteers have allowed 1 punt return yard?
What?
Yeah, and get this, only 44 punt return yards in Josh Heupel's entire coaching career at Tennessee.
I don't know if that's good or not, because surely that's either saying that teams are scoring at a great rate against his team, or his defense are getting a lot of turnovers?
Yeah, I don't know, but I just figured one punt return. Like teams, you think a punt return generally, you're probably at least 5 yards, even if you're behind
Well,
where you would be if you let it bounce out.
I was
Just
going to say,
one
yeah.
punt return yard, or the whole season is
Or their
ridiculous.
punter is incredible and is literally putting it so high in the air that they're calling fair catch every time. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess in college there is a lot more fair catches. But yeah, still that's quite incredible. One punt return yard.
that's crazy. I don't. I'm just trying to look up how long he's been. Josh Heupel has been head coach of. Oh, so he's been head coach for. Well, this would be his third year.
Yeah.
So they're allowing like 15 yards basically a year on punt returns.
That's mad.
Yeah. And did you see Russell Wilson's next gen probability catch on his Cortland Sutton throw?
No.
The probability of them making that pass at that time was 2.8%, the lowest ever recorded by next gen.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty good. Like the toe tap in the corner was, well, only 2.8% going to happen.
I mean, there was some unbelievable catches this week. His was amazing. Chris Olave's and it wasn't just the fact that Jameis Winston threw a great ball, which doesn't happen all that often, but it's the fact he did it off the bench, so he had almost like no warm-up time. Maybe that's his better. And then the toe tap, because it brought up an interesting point. I don't know if you saw the Olave touchdown. So Olave gets he lands his foot on the defender. And I was in a chat when this happened, and then he got his toe down. But if his foot had not got on the turf, if it finished on the defender and he went out of bounds, that would have been no catch.
Even though the defender was inbounds?
Yeah.
I guess because he didn't touch the floor.
He didn't touch the floor. So, yeah, that brought up an interesting point. CeeDee Lamb's one-handed grab, which was just nuts. He sort of caught it down here. It was mad. There was some unbelievable catches this week. So, yeah, I definitely enjoyed. I thought this week's NFL was probably the best week of the season. I'd go as far to say. I thought there was a lot of amazing game. I mean, if you're a Jags fan, then you probably didn't enjoy it all that much. Or if you're a Giants fan, you definitely didn't enjoy it at all. But yeah, on the whole, I thought it was an excellent week. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thoroughly.
Dolphins fans enjoyed themselves a week off, and everyone in their
Yeah.
division gave up.
Yeah, imagine going further ahead in your division without playing.
I know.
It's quite something. It's quite an achievement.
Very well done.
Definitely Dolphins fans were very pleased. Yeah, all in all, very, very good week, must say.
Indeed. Murf, tell us about the mid-season elimination competition.
Yeah, I meant to take that out of the read. Apologies.
It's gone now. Let's rate that.
Yeah, it's going strong. First eliminators, or first 5 people were eliminated from the competition this week. We lose a few more this week, so should be exciting. And then we announced our FFCC quarterfinalists this week, as well as our international or intercontinental plate quarterfinalists as well. So down to the business end of the competition there. So yeah, it's good to do the Elimination League, and it took us over £6,000, I think, for MPS, which is just amazing that we've raised so much money. I'm just going to check the final total. Well, it's not final total, but the total that we've got just now. But yeah, last time I looked was over £6,000, which is amazing. So thank you so much to everyone who plays in all the competitions and has donated, because it's been one of our best years ever. And yeah, I'm sort of stalling for time here because it is.
Well, I would go on if you've got it.
It's £6,004.57,
which is an incredible amount of money.
Yeah, unbelievable. We're gonna do a lot. It's gonna do a lot of good with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, unbelievable to get that kind of money raised, and over 457 separate donations as well, which is amazing.
Yeah, shout out to Stormo from my FFCC division, good friend of mine as well, and he's made it to the quarters. So come on, Stormo, you can do it. Let's take that baby home.
If Stormo wins this, I did tweet this out. If Stormo wins it, he'll be the 5th different winner from a 5th different country in the 5 years we've done the FFCC?
What nationality?
Yeah, nationality. Well, our
Yeah.
country, because he's in Wales. We haven't had a... So he's...
It's true. It's true.
We would say nationality, but also location. It would work either way.
Yeah, I suppose.
Friend of the show, Jack, who was on 2 weeks ago, he won in year 1 from England. Year 2 was Vigard from Norway. Year 3 was Andy Singleton from the USA, New York. Again, friend of the show, he's been on. Year 4 was my friend Jazza, who, from Scotland.
Wowzers, we are truly a international podcast when it comes to winners.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. Like, if Stormo won 5 different countries, 5 different winners, that'd be mad. So we're already guaranteed new winner, which is quite good. So yeah, and then also England has a 1 in 2 chance of winning the Intercontinental Plate as well. 4 of the final 8 are from England. So repping hard.
There we go. There we go. Anything surprise you from week 10, Murf? Anything that really caught your eye?
I don't know why I put this, because I maybe shouldn't be surprised in Arthur Smith, but I'm going to say it anyway. They had a passing rate over expected of minus 22.1%, which is the second lowest amount all season. And the one thing when you get into a game against Carolina is their secondary's trash. Like, it's bad. Like, you throw against Arizona. If I said Carolina, I meant Arizona. Like, you throw against Arizona. That's what you got to do, right? You've got to just absolutely obliterate the secondary, put the ball in the air. And listen, I know they had Tyler Heineke, and I know he got injured, and then they brought Desmond Ridder in. But throw the ball, man. Look at the weapons you've got. And they, honestly, it's beggars belief. Like, how I don't understand that matchup, how you don't throw the ball to Drake London. He had, I think, the 2nd or 3rd best wide receiver cornerback matchup of anyone last week, and just did not get him the ball. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what are you doing? Like, I would have just put the ball in the air 30 times and just seen what happened. And I guarantee you would have got more points than the Atlanta Falcons, because it's just shocking. A minus 22.1 passing rate over expected is abysmal. Like, it's just ludicrous. I was surprised when I was going back through stats that Devontae Adams had 175 air yards. I was like, that's wild. How did he have 175 air yards? And then was simply reminded that he had 13 targets and only caught 6 of them because Aiden O'Connell is trash. I don't know why they don't wheel Jimmy Garoppolo back. Like, I don't understand this. Like, Aiden O'Connell is not a franchise QB. Like, we've determined this already. So just roll out Jimmy G. You're paying him all the money anyway. Just roll him out there. Draft a new QB next year. It's all good. Like, Jimmy G will lose games on his own, but at least it'll be semi-entertaining. And then also just how bad Saquon Barkley was. And I feel bad for him because he's the only offensive player on that team that's worth a pinch of salt. But still, like, and I get it. Like, the Cowboys are good. They're a good defensive unit. Dan Quinn is coaching them to a high level. I get that. I get that he stacked the box load, but I still think that he could have been better ultimately. So, but you know, Tommy DeVito got a couple of touchdowns, so you know, all for him. I don't really have it. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the worst games I've ever seen. But yeah, I just was surprised by how bad Barkley was. Ultimately, I thought it'd be better. Do you have any?
Nothing that we haven't talked about, really. Nothing that's extra to add to the doc. It was, I think, for me, and it leads on to your next point as well. Like, your main learning from Week 10 is the bad offenses in the NFL are now terrible. There was a couple of seasons ago, you could still start players on bad offenses. We had that Saquon Barkley season where he was really good and the Giants were trash. Whereas now, Falcons, Giants, you know, even the Raiders, players that Devonta Adams, yes, he scored 14 points this week, but before that, he's been shocking. Bad teams result in bad fantasy players at the moment, and it's really difficult to pick players. I'm finding it hard to pick players at the moment because A, there's so many injuries. B, most of my leagues are deep, so I'm struggling anyway. And then C, the matchups I'm picking on what I think should be a good matchup, and it turns out to be a terrible one. So yeah.
I think there's a good element of that. I think the things that I would say, and I put in the doc here, and then I'm going to expand upon it, is fatal pieces in a horrible offense. And I put Giants, for example, where of course you're not going to fade Saquon Barkley, right? But ultimately, everyone else on that offense can just go. But what I would say this year, on your point of all these injuries and matchups, if you've done the work, if you are one of the most active players in your league, you do the most transactions, you're doing trades, and you're hustling and bustling, you're probably having quite a good year. This kind of year sits very well with fantasy managers that work hard. It's a very much a grinder's year that you're not going to get a lot given to you this year. You're going to have to earn it, which suits players like myself. It will certainly help a lot of players. It doesn't help me when I'm in a home league and then I don't pay as much attention to that home league and then get out hustled, and that's fine. If I get out hustled, I'll own it. But if you're hustling, you're doing a good job. And you'll be on top of it because you'd have picked up key waiver wise. If you're listening to things like the Strategy Points podcast I did, I feel like I dropped a good one today on Fab strategy. Spoiler alert, how to get other people in your league to spend more Fab. So if you want to learn how sort of not a dark art, it's not a dark art, but if you want to learn how to get people to spend more money on Fab claims, listen to the show I dropped earlier on today. It's about half an hour long. There's a lot of good stuff in there, I think. So you get a lot out of
it. Nice. Talking of trades and stuff, do you think Keenan Allen has a ridiculous end of season? Do you think he's going to have an end of season that could win teams? Like if you went to trade for him before the trade deadline, do you think he could win you a league?
I'd argue he probably could. I'd argue he probably would. It probably would win you a league overall because, I mean, depending on format, but I think you're looking at him as a top 3 wide receiver asset in the league right now. And then I think when you're looking at what he's doing, the only thing that's going to stop him is injury. But I mean, I'm looking at him now. He's third overall in scoring. He's only 1.4 points behind AJ Brown. Stephon Diggs is behind him, and Stephon Diggs has got a bye to come. So yeah, you're looking at him. He's going to easily finish in the top 5. I mean that sort of second to 5th, which is Hill. Second is Brown, then Allen, then Diggs, then Lamb, are separated by less than 6 points. So he's going to be there or thereabouts. I think if you've got one of those 5, you're in really good stead. If you've got 2 of those 5, you're on your way to a championship. So I think if you can acquire Keenan Allen, then I think he's going to cost you, probably in a dynasty league, he's going to cost you more than he's worth. In a redraft league, I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're giving up if you're going to acquire him, as long as you're not losing too much more out the starting lineup and you lose some depth. You could make an all-in move for him. But the problem with Keenan Allen, as it always has been, is durability. He's a pretty durable player. Like, he's not what I'd call a sick note injury-prone player, but he has been known to get injuries. But it definitely looks like Herbert is over his broken finger. Like I said, I thought he was phenomenal on Sunday, and if you can get a piece of that offense, it's gonna really help you going forward.
Yeah, I've been offered him in the dynasty league, and I'm knocking on the door. I'm not top. I'm third at the moment, and I've been offered him in the dynasty league, and I'm a bit shy at running back, and I have AJ Brown and Jamar Chase as 2 of my wide receivers, but he might help me get a bye. I could chase the team in second, but the guy who's offering it, he wants my first round pick, which isn't my first round pick. It's one of the 2 worst teams in the league's first round pick. So to give up a 1-1, a 1-2 feels like a bit much for Keenan Allen.
That's close. I would say that's close. I think given the situation you're in, it does. But I mean, you're giving up Is it Superflex or one QB?
It's one QB.
So you're giving up Marvin Harrison Jr. or
That's it. That's the only really player I want next year. And if he doesn't go 101, I will be absolutely shocked.
Yeah. So in that sort of format, it'd be. I mean, you can always get a darling that comes out late, but yeah, I'd say that he's more than likely going to be the 101 in most formats. So I think it's an interesting one because depending on where he lands and depending on how he performs, it could be a slow burn, it could be an instant burn. We've seen rookies come in and absolutely smash it early. But I always it depends. I'm an aggressive player. It's the sort of move I would make because I'm all about trying to win chips, but I'd like to feel pretty confident I'm going to get to the final two. If you're going to get to the playoffs anyway,
I'm pretty much locked. I'm one game away from locking my playoff.
Then you'd need to analyze what his matchups will be in the playoffs. You need to listen to the Strategy Points podcast, and I'll do a playoffs breakdown and see how he works out.
Yeah.
There's a teaser for
it. I just don't want to give up. This is my trouble. See, I've got Garrett Wilson, Chase, and AJ Brown. They're locked in every week as my 3 starters.
Yeah.
And then I am a running back away from being elite. But the fact I could plug Keenan Allen as a flex and just make my push this year for the ring is very tempting.
It's very tempting. I mean, look, it's definitely. Why can't you counter with like your first instead of the 101, 102?
Because I don't have my first.
Oh, okay. Well, then that puts that out the window. Right.
Yeah. I think I might have 2 25th first, so I might chuck one of them in with an extra pick of like a late third or something and see what he says. And
or a second next year and your second next year and a 2025 one.
Yeah. Okay.
That seems like it's a slight overpay, but to win a title now and you get to keep 101, 102, probably looks like it'll work.
Yeah. Okay. Right, let's do some statistical trends as we always tend to at this time of the week. It's coming up to 8 p.m. Thursday evening. Where do you want to start, Murf? Who have you got first on your statistical trends list?
I've got Ty Chandler, right? So Ty Chandler is the waiver wire hotness of the week. And a lot of people bought him because Mattison got concussed. He's likely going to be out this week. There's a bye coming. So obviously, and Cam Akers is gone as Cam Akers goes. So ultimately, he's on IR. Get well soon, Cam Akers. You're not listening. But ultimately, like people who don't really watch all of the games won't know this. So this is why I'm going to call this out. Ty Chandler actually was getting quite a lot of the early usage as well in this game, and he actually got the touchdown before Mattison went off. So a lot of this, if you're just box score scouting, you're going to look at this game and go, Mattison got injured, got concussed, left the game. Ty Chandler came in and had a stormer. And actually, that's not what happened. What kind of happened was Ty Chandler was at least even pecking with Alexander Mattison, maybe even slightly ahead, got the touchdown. So he got the value touch in the key area and not Mattison. And then he also had a huge 29-yard touchdown that was called back for a hold. My point on this is if you've bought Ty Chandler, you're potentially getting the running back one in Minnesota because I'm not convinced by how bad Alexander Mattison, and he has been bad. Like we're talking historically bad. Ty Chandler really could actually be the guy to finish the season with the Vikings. So I just wanted to call it out that the reason he was a good ad wasn't just because he had a good week, but it's actually because he's probably going to get the job. He's probably ahead of Mattison. And if he storms it, I mean, the only way he doesn't is if he has a bad week this week. If he storms it this week, goodbye, Mattison. He is number 2 on this depth chart. He'll still get touches. He'll still get used. But Alexander Mattison owners should be slightly concerned that Ty Chandler's coming for the job because it's very, very close.
I mean, Matheson owners should have been concerned many weeks ago when it turned out the guy isn't a running back one. But yeah,
Yeah, but the fact that Cam Akers went onto IR, they would have felt pretty good that actually he's going to get 100% of the work and he's going to be fine. But yeah, the signal was there that they were always looking to replace Matheson. They signed Cam Akers. That's never a good sign. Yes, okay, he held off Cam Akers, fair play. But actually, it looks like there's a changing of the guard.
Yeah. Talking of a changing of guard, Kyler Murray comes back and Trey McBride instantly becomes a hero.
Yeah, I wouldn't say instantly becomes a hero, but he looked immense. Like, he was phenomenal. He was easily the best player on the field in this game. Like, He was like elite. Absolutely mad he was. He is easily, I talked about this maybe last week, maybe the week before. At some point, I mentioned he's probably a tight end one for the rest of the season. He's locked in for that. All day long, he's a top 7 or 8 tight end for the rest of the season. The only thing that stops him from probably being in that upper echelon is he's got to buy in week 13, 14. He's got to buy soon. So other than that, yeah, like he's locked in. He looks elite. He looks phenomenal. I mean, how good are these rookie tight ends, right? He's Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, and now you got Trey McBride. These guys look awesome. Like they've actually sort of invigorated some life into a position that was, except for 3 or 4 guys, was pretty meh. So it's good to see these guys performing. Even Brock Wright scored a touchdown from the tight end position. Actually, that was a good touchdown for the Lions. But yeah, not a rookie. I don't know why I threw that out there. But yeah, Trey McBride was awesome. Like all hail the new tight end king that he's going to be.
It's just tight end season right now. They're popping off all over the place. So talking of popping off, Jonathan Taylor in a game that was potentially the worst NFL game that has ever been witnessed by any fans ever, the Colts-Patriots game. Jonathan Taylor has finally put the sword to Zach Moss's fantasy stock.
Yeah, it looks like that one is done. Yeah, it does look like that one is definitely done. 89% snap share for I completely forgot about this game actually.
Rightly so.
Yeah, it was awful. Like poor Germany. Like I forgot that this game was on early in the day. Yeah, one of the worst games ever seen. On like German fans must be thinking, yeah, that was amazing, and then they get that. Poor them. That is, what a terrible excuse for a game that was. Yeah, 89% snap share for Jonathan Taylor. Did get the game's only touchdown. Zach Moss, one touch. I mean, if that stays, they're on bye this week. If that stays, Zach Moss can go. He can go. He's like, they paid Jonathan Taylor. It's not a surprise. The only thing that I would hold on some hope to is if the Colts fade away from like they're 5-5, so they are competitive in the AFC. If they fade away to insignificance, which is very possible, and should be with Gardner Minshew, and I like Gardner Minshew, but I mean. He is who he is. There are better teams in the AFC than the Colts. But when they fade away, I could expect Moss to maybe have a resurgence and they save Taylor. But for right now, yeah, you can't start Moss in any format for the next few weeks.
No, if you want some Moss, come round to mine because I've got loads on the garage. So
hey,
Kyler Murray looks back to being Kyler Murray pretty much instantaneously.
Yeah, he looked awesome, really mobile. I was a bit shocked that they put Clayton Tune in for rushing touchdown on the goal line. That was a bit of a surprise to see. But I guess they just didn't want to hurt Kyler. But then I can't see why they couldn't just give it to James Conner. But there you go. But yeah, other than that, and Clayton Tune did his best to mess that up. Like he fumbled the snap as well. Like. Phenomenal. He gets a chance to score a touchdown. He nearly yipped it. Like it was horrendous. But he got in, so fair play. Kyler Murray looked great. Was really good. He didn't look at all injured. He looked really solid. He made some big gains, some really crucial runs on the game-winning drive. He had a big one on 3rd down where he sort of runs to the left and then he kind of loops all the way around. And then gets the first down and more. So yeah, he looked really, really good. Back to the Kyler Murray of old. Definitely QB1 for the rest of the season. Again, minus the bye.
Sam Howell, baby. Let's talk about Sam Howell. I mean, I know he's not on this list, but we talked about it last week. Sam Howell, Kyler, and I started Sam Howell, and yeah, thanks very much. points in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Howell is now the QB3 in
Yes.
fantasy football as it stands right now, which is really impressive. I mean, in points per game, he is behind Herbert and Dak because he's not had his bye yet. But still, that's Mahomes as well. But let's call it for what it is. He's having a phenomenal season. He, those last 3 games, 32 points, 18.7 points, 24.2 points this week. Yeah, I mean, look, you can't go too far wrong. I did have him above Kyler this week or last week, so I do feel like I was slightly vindicated. Although Kyler himself did have a good week. I'm just scrolling down. I can't find him on the page, so I'm trying to see what he got this week. 18.3. So, I did say it'd be relatively close. 5-6 points. I don't think is that far off. Who was in the middle of that? Was it Gino?
Yeah, Gino was Gino, and I had him too.
So Gino was 24.1, Howell was 24.2, and I had those guys back to back. So yeah, I feel like I appropriated those guys. The only thing I did, I probably overestimated a couple of guys more because Howell was QB4 on the week and Smith was QB5 on the week. I had them at 8 and 9. But still, like, I was right to have those guys. Probably was a bit higher on Kyler Murray, but then there were some guys like Russell Wilson had a better week than I kind of expected. Baker Mayfield had a better week than I expected. So there's a couple guys there that and Jordan Love had a slightly better week than I expected, but not by much. But yeah, I mean, like on the whole, it was Sam Howell's having a really, really good season. He's going to have a bye at some point, which is a little bit annoying. But yeah, I mean, listen, he's on to have a really, really good season. And the only thing I would say is he's one of these that is very good for fantasy football. I don't know how good he is in real life. For me, he's like the new Jameis Winston, only with less turnovers, but not that many less. So, like, I'm not actually convinced that Sam Howell is the future in Washington. So I look at his play and I think there's moments and I think I see him doing quite well. And I think, oh, yeah, he looks quite good. And then there's times I think that he fails to make very, very easy throws. And part of that is development, and that's fine. And I'm not sitting here and I'm not going to write him off. But I'm not sold on Howell being the future of the franchise. That's one thing I will say. I think they could easily bring in another quarterback and play just as well, if not better.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Let's switch back to the Cardinals then, and you've got them as a concentrating passing game with Jonathan Gannon, a coach to watch.
Yeah, so might as well get all the Cardinals out of the way here. So yeah, I just think that it's interesting, like the way that they coach, or the way Jonathan Cannon's coaching his team. I think they're going to be a bit more aggressive. I don't think they've been as aggressive as they could be with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. That's probably why they made a change. So it's going to be interesting. And then we saw James Conner. He was quite efficient, 16 carries for 73 yards. So it looked good. He looked good. So I think when you've got a rusher like James Conner who can get your first downs and keep drives going, you've got Kyler Murray who can extend plays and keep drives going. Michael Wilson looked good. He got a touchdown taken away from him for a knee that was about half a yard short, and it was the right decision. And then you got Marquise Hollywood-Brown who could stretch the field. I think the Cardinals, I wasn't as down on the Cardinals as other people were. I did predict them to finish with 6 or 7 wins. I kind of thought Kyler Murray was going to be back before this point when I made that prediction. I will admit, but I did feel like they had the recipes of a half-decent offensive team. So I think now you've got 6 games here to really sort of judge, or 7 games. No, 6 games to really judge. No, it's 7 games to really judge how they're going to play going forward. And I'm excited that I'm going to sit and watch, but it wouldn't shock me if they are trying to win. It wouldn't shock me. And, people talk about Arizona as, they're going to tank for Caleb Williams. There's 2 things that are massively wrong with that statement. The first is that they've got Kyler Murray under a ridiculous contract that they can't get away from. And they're not going to pay Kyler Murray $60-70 million to sit around and do nothing. They're just not. And no one's trading for that contract either, because it's a heavily, heavily paid, weighted contract. So Kyler Murray's there. He's there for the next 2 years, whether anyone likes it or not. They're not going to get out of that trade. They're not going to get out of that contract easily. Now, you could say, well, okay, you could draft Caleb Williams and he could sit behind for a year. You're not spending the 1 overall pick on a player to sit. That's just not going to happen. Doesn't happen. I can't ever remember it happening. And the outroar that would occur if that did happen would be insane. The second thing is Jonathan Gannon is a rookie head coach in his first ever NFL gig. He is not going to sit here and tank. Just not going to do it. He's not waited all this time to get a job to tank. It's just not going to happen. The organization isn't going to tell him to tank because they cannot tell him to tank. He is not going to deliberately lose games. So, Cardinals fans thinking they're going to get Caleb Williams, they need to get this idea in their head because I tell you now, Kyler Murray is going to win games to make sure they don't get him. He's got a natural incentive, which is greater than anyone else. He's going to stop them getting the pick that's going to stop him getting the guy that could take his job. Which
makes sense.
Yeah, and also I think if the Cardinals got the 1 pick, I think they trade down. I really do. I don't think they take Caleb Williams. That's... I just don't see him tanking. So I think they're going to be exciting. I think they're going to be fun. So I think people sitting there thinking, oh, well, they're going to tank. Just get the idea in your head. I don't think they are. They proved it. They proved it on Sunday that they're not going to tank. They're going to go out there and win. And they put some good offensive performances. It's just the defense is terrible. And it is. It's really bad. But their offense is actually, even Josh Dobbs, got them to put points up. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Talking of another offense, let's talk about these dual-headed Lion running backs where the 1-2 punch that's pretty potent.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting how they used them. Like, they kind of alternated the drives. So one drive would be a Jahmyr Gibbs drive. The next would be a David Montgomery drive. He had one drive that was just one play. He took it 75 yards to the house. He looked incredible, by the way, coming off an injury. He looked absolutely insane. Gibbs did have more routes run. So it was quite a bit more, 64 to 30%. Basically, Gibbs got all the 2-minute stuff. That's kind of how I've interpreted this. So it's interesting. Like we talked about in the preseason, Montgomery's going to lead back. Montgomery's going to have them, all the early down work. Gibbs will have the secondary work. Gibbs has really come on a long way. He's benefited from Montgomery getting injured, and he's now made a huge role for himself. But this is a very much a 1-2 punch. They're a 1A and a 1A. There's no 1A, 1B. They're a 1A, 1A. They're going to alternate drives. What I will say is I still think Montgomery's going to get the edge at the goal line. Anything inside the 5, inside the 3. But mind you, Gibbs did get a touchdown from that range earlier. So maybe I'm slightly out of turn with that. Maybe they use them on alternate drives. Maybe they decide a different way of using them. I don't know. But ultimately, they've got 2 1A backs, which is a phenomenal weapon to have for the Lions. And, they could get the 1 seed in the NFC. They really could. They're the most balanced attack offensively in the NFC.
Scary. America's team playing well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they played some absolute dross at the weekend, which does help. CeeDee Lamb became the first NFL wide receiver to record 3 consecutive games of 10 plus catches and 150 yards. So CD is lighting it up right now. But the Cowboys also 3 straight games at 8.8% passing rate over expected or higher since the bye. They only had 1 positive passing rate over expected game before the bye. So, and their aggressiveness, according to Next Gen Stats, is like off the charts. It's massive at the moment. So they've kind of clicked. They kind of found this formula. They got it together on the bye, and they've started smashing teams. Can they keep it up for the rest of the season? Probably not. But at the moment, I have a league where I have Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and Dak Prescott as my quarterbacks. And it's super flex to start 2, and it's like genuinely the hardest decision I'm gonna make all week is which one of those. And like last week, I left Dak out, and I was like, well, yeah, I just have to sit Dak, and it was not the wrong. It was sort of the wrong. I was still top scorer, so it didn't really impact. But yeah, it's a hard one. Like having those 3 quarterbacks is a embarrassment of riches at the moment in a super flex.
No doubt. Yeah, Michael Mayer. You mentioned him many weeks ago now as somebody to keep an eye on and possibly own as a tight end, and he's coming back to
Well, I've kind of gone both ways. I said buy him, and then I said no, ignore him, and now he's back up to 73% of routes, and he had a strong TD catch, so you might get some more reps. So, yeah, look, tough matchup this week, which might help Michael Mayer. I actually wrote up a column for Fantasy Pros today about wide receiver cornerback matchups, and Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams both have pretty bad matchups, so that could see them go a little bit more vertical over the middle of the field, and that could see them going to Michael Mayer a bit more this weekend. So I like Mayer as a outside top 12 tight end for the rest of the season. I'm more concerned about, and there's another rookie tight end who's doing a really good job. More concerned about the rookie quarterback there than I am about Mayer. But yeah, he definitely looks like he's getting an increased role.
Increased role. Let's talk about Pinot Grigio. No, I'm talking Zach Charbonnet. What's he doing to Kenneth Walker?
He's outsnapped him for the third consecutive week. So Walker is still getting more rushes and more touches, but Charbonnet is clearly taking a bigger role. So we talked about it with Jack 2 weeks ago. I talked about two situations that you'll see more of this transition. We saw it both happen this week. One was with Pollard and Rico Dowdle, and we saw Rico Dowdle have a role. And people will say, yep, he got a lot of junkyard yards, and he did, but he also got quite a lot of the early work as well before the game was really a blowout. He also got a TD, and Pollard didn't. That's another thing to kind of note. But the same with Charbonnet looked really good. He looked really strong. He looked really efficient as a runner. That's going to be a situation that as the Seahawks progress closer and closer to playoff territory, they're going to rest Walker. So come fantasy playoff season, Charbonnet could get a much more increased role as they look to sort of just take the weight off Walker. I don't think Walker's going to like fade off. I still think Walker's a top 10 running back for the rest of the season, but I do think that Charbonnet is going to have more and more impact. And I think around the fantasy playoffs, he's just going to cap Walker's upside a little bit. As a Walker owner, I'd be slightly concerned. I wouldn't be concerned enough to ditch Walker or get rid of him, but I would be concerned enough to think that the high ceiling days are like he had a really good outing at the weekend, Walker, but it was made up really of a 60-plus yard receiving touchdown. That kind of made the bulk of his points. So you take that out, it was okay, but it wasn't good. And that's kind of where I expect it to be.
Let's talk some Quentin Johnson. You and I talked about him earlier in the season as somebody to basically completely let go of us, was filling none of the prophecies that we wanted him to. He's on an uptick now, though.
I don't know. He is and he's not. He caught all 4 targets, scored a touchdown. He drew 3 DPIs. He also gave away a couple of DPIs. If the coaches are watching the film, which I would expect, there's a few routes he gives up on. There's a few routes he was a little bit lackadaisical on. There's a couple of routes. There was one play, and it was Davis got absolutely smashed at the line, behind the line of scrimmage. Johnson was sent out there to block, and he didn't block. Like, Davis just got hammered by the leg. His legs taken out from him, and Davis isn't there blocking. And that's a problem. So if you've got a player who isn't running his routes and isn't doing his jobs, he's not going to be as efficient as other players. So you look at a player like Jalen Guyton, who came into this, he actually got more targets, he got more yards, got a touchdown as well in this game, Jalen Guyton. He's got a great match at Jalen Guyton this week. If you want like a really deep play, he was a bit of a waiver wire pickup this week, so he might not be available, but if he is, I really like Jalen Guyton this week. I actually think he's quite a good little deep stash play. I think he's going to absolutely torch the cornerback he's up against for pace. So, yeah, I like that one a lot. I just think Johnston's not going to have enough to be. He's a touchdown dependent play, and I don't see that changing in weeks to come. I think he's got a lot. He looks very raw. I don't think. I look at the rookie wide receivers that have come in. And of all the first-round wide receivers, I don't think he's anywhere near him. I really just don't. He's nowhere near Zay Flowers. Even JSN, I know he's limited, but JSN looks good when he's out there. He's just got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. That's not his fault. That's just the situation he's in. But he looks good when he's out there. I just don't see it in Johnston at the moment. And I really like Johnston. He was one of my favorite receivers in this draft. I don't know if he's not picking it up. I don't know if it's a mentality thing. I don't know what it is, but there was times on Sunday he did not look very good. And he looked like he gave up and he wasn't doing the job he was assigned to do. There's one play where Herbert extends the play by about 5 or 6 seconds and he finds Johnston. He just gets, it's just the fact that Johnston kind of gave up his route, couldn't shake a man. Then he kind of got into some space and he got loose and made a catch. It's a bit lucky more than anything with something like that. The touchdown play is a good play, well designed, but yeah, I'm not there on Johnston. I'm really not at the moment. He's going to have to do a lot more to impress me.
Talking of somebody who's impressed you, how's your boy Marvin Mims getting on this season?
I mean, he was, from a stat line perspective, he was absolutely terrible on Monday Night Football, minus 0.3 fantasy points. But he did get up to 76% of routes. So it's interesting. Like, this offense is not great. It's fair to say. So I'd like to think that Mims is going to get more opportunities. I do think that he's going to be a cheap ad right now. And I would probably, I'm not advocating in a shallow league that you add him, but in a deeper league, if he's knocking around, I would take a punt. I'm not saying that I'm expecting him to come good because I don't buy this offense. I don't think it's a good offense at all. But I just think someone's got to catch the ball. It's clearly not going to be Jerry Jeudy. I don't know what is going on behind the scenes there, but there's something clearly not on page with the coaching staff, the quarterback, and the wide receiver there. Cortland Sutton is the only one that looks like he's doing anything from a wide receiver perspective. So I think someone else has got to go out there and catch a ball. And I think they're going to go with Mims. It's the guy they drafted. It's the guy Peyton's invested in. So I do think he's going to get there by some point this season. And I think in a deep league, he's worth a stash. In a shallow league, I wouldn't because I think there's better players out there. But if you are struggling at the wide receiver position, he's worth a punt. That's kind of where I'm with Mims.
A.T. Perry. What do you know about him?
Well, first touchdown grab at the weekend for the Saints. He seems to be the guy who's going to come in and replace Michael Thomas. Now, Michael Thomas is a knee injury. It appears to be quite serious. They're on bye this week, so we're not going to get any update. I would say that A.T. Perry is a guy that should be on your radar. Now, not in a serious spend loads of fab and acquire him or acquire him in a trade, but I do think if you're in a deep league and you're thinking of guys that can get into a flex and do a job, especially if you're pre-planning for your week 13 bye, because there's a lot of players going on bye, A.T. Perry's not a bad name to look around and get your 10 fantasy points. If he plays instead of Thomas, he could be in line for a decent amount, especially if Derek Carr, who's injured yet again, sits and it goes to Jameis Winston and they put the ball in the air. A.T. Perry could do a decent job here. So he's one I wouldn't necessarily go out and make a really fast add-on unless you're in a deep league. Then I'm absolutely smashing an ad on him. But in a shallow league, I'm definitely I've got an eye on him. If someone wants to listen to this and jump ahead of me, then crack on. But I do think that he's someone that I'd be picking up in places and keeping an eye on. And I do think that if Thomas's knee injury is worse than feared, then A.T. Perry, he got 89% of he played 89% of the snaps after Michael Thomas left the game. He's clearly that replacement. So I think he's going to be in line for a decent amount of work. His touchdown was really good as well. He did well on the contested catch.
We've already talked about Tennessee Volunteers. Let's talk about another one. Cedric Tillman is on the rise a little bit since the DPJ trade.
Yeah, so a lot of my best ball teams early on had a lot of Cedric Tillman on him. I really liked him as a player. I knew there was obviously a little bit of the Josh Heupel hype around him. But actually, I do think that Cedric Tillman has a lot about him. So back-to-back season high in routes, so he was up to 87% here. The problem is now DTR is in play. Deshaun Watson's out for the season. This offense is going to go to the toilet. If PJ Walker comes in, it might be a little bit exciting, but I don't think the bottom line is you can't back a wide receiver 3 in this offense. In a dynasty play, if you've got shares of Cedric Tillman, this looks good. They traded DPJ, so therefore Tillman is the easy 3. In future years, he's going to look quite good, but for the rest of this season, he's a nothing really, unfortunately. And so no fault of his own because he's looked quite good when he has come into games and impacted.
Devin Singletary, a massive 31 touch game, but maybe not as exciting as it could be.
No, listen, I wasn't expecting 31 touches. That's quite a huge amount, but he only had 3 high value touches. So effectively, when the game's on the line and when it gets important, Devin Singletary is absolutely nowhere to be seen. He just basically is in a donkey workload. Basically, he's kind of he's going to do all the donkey work. He's going to do all the short yardage stuff, mid yardage stuff. But as soon as the game gets into the red zone, he's nowhere to be seen. And that's a problem because if he is a running back, he's basically a volume dependent back to get a relatively low return on. So, for him to, I just don't see, there's no ceiling. There's absolutely no ceiling with Devin Singletary. Now, the way the state of the running back position is, there's a bit of value, but he's not going to get 31 touches a game. That's not going to happen that often. Yeah, I mean, great for him. He did get in the box and he got 150 yards, but it kind of looks a lot better than it is my point. So people on the back of this game will readjust their forecast and go, Devin Singletary is a top 15 running back for the rest of the season. No. No. Nico Collins was out of this offense. They didn't have anyone to really kind of plug in and play. Nico Collins will be back. And when he is, that workload's going to go heavily down. He's not going to get 30 carries ever again in this offense. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Right. Next up, we have No, we don't. We've got Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. So 5 TDs inside the 10 yards, and then 6. He's had 6 it touches inside the 10 over the past 4 games. So Jerome Ford is going to get a lot of the work. And then it looks like Kareem Hunt is going to be a bit of a touchdown vulture. Having said that, the fact that DTR is in play now, I think Jerome Ford's going to get a lot more work. So the way I kind of look at this is almost like the reverse of what I just said about Devin Singletary. Because this is a run-first offense, they are going to run the ball a heck of a lot anyway. Now they're going to run it even more. I can see Jerome Ford getting, close to 25 touches a game if they got significant possession of the football. The worry is that DTR doesn't extend the play a lot. So you look at this game, Jerome Ford had 17 carries for 107 yards, but he had no touchdowns. He also did have 1 catch in this game. And then Kareem Hunt had only 10 carries for 32 yards, so he didn't run the ball well, but he got in the box just because he's a big, stockier back. So Kareem Hunt is going to be the touchdown vulture. Jerome Ford's going to do all the other work. But Jerome Ford has this talent to where he can break away and get some. I still like the volume play. I like the trade. I think you can still trade quite low on Jerome Ford. I would be looking to acquire him, but I don't think Kareem Hunt, you can start him on the volume that he has unless you're desperate. But he will likely vulture touchdowns.
Khalil Herbert could be returning to the Bears' backfield soon. What does that do for Donta Foreman?
I think Khalil Herbert's done. I've stood by this all season. I stood by it in the off-season. I stood by it when he was starting to do well. I still stand by it now. So I look at this and say that Donta Foreman has come out. You and I talked about him heavily. He got injured. He had a rough start, but really heavy usage. He got both touches inside the 10. He scored a touchdown. I really think that he has earned that role to be the significant lead back. He is questionable this week. That could put a mocker on things. I actually think Khalil Herbert is third in this pecking list now. He's been out for so long. I think it's Foreman, Johnson, Herbert, and I don't see anything that's going to change my mind until it does.
Okay, let's talk about Calvin Ridley.
I mean, we're getting to the point now where he's almost not a thing, which is crazy, right? So 3 targets this week. He just looks like a spare part in this offense. Now, listen, it's a hard one to judge because they got whooped. I mean, they got obliterated. That defensive line of Bosa and Chase Young is just ridiculous. Like, they just didn't have an answer to that all game. And they'll have better days. But we've already seen this downtrend in Ridley. We've seen that Kirk, and don't forget, they pay Kirk a lot of money. They pay Kirk, 85 million? I mean, it's not all guaranteed, but still, he was the one that got the big contract.
Yeah.
So there was something this coaching staff liked in Kirk a lot more than what they see. And yes, they've traded for Ridley. They traded assets for Ridley, but I also think they got Ridley quite cheap. So I think Ridley's still something, but he's not the number one. It's Kirk. So it's disappointing for people that invested in Ridley because you're not going to get your return, but there's still going to be something there for the rest of the season. Just try not to give up hope.
Talking of not number ones, and then moving on to number twos, Chase Edmonds is definitely the clear number two, but is not doing anything with these touches.
Listen, I've said this for weeks, but I can't remember if I said it on here or if I said it on the Strategy Points podcast. But ultimately, you don't own the number two running back in Tampa because their run game is crap. It's been crap for about 3 or 4 years. Rashad White is doing really well, but he's doing really well mostly in the receiving game. If you look at his numbers and where he is in sort of scoring for PPR, half point PPR, he's, RB4 over the last few weeks. Phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. And he looks good, but he's getting most of that in the passing game. He's getting a bit more on the ground than we've seen, but ultimately this run game is poor. So Chase Edmonds looks crap. He looks awful. Don't think that's entirely his fault. I think this offensive line and this scheme that Tampa have run for the last 3 or 4 years, even with a different offensive coordinator, doesn't work for run games. I don't think it looks good. I just think my point on this, and the only reason I put this in there is if you are owning Chase Edmonds, he can go. If you own Keyshawn Vaughn, he can go. If you own any other Sean Tucker, he can go. Literally, any running back that's not named Rashad White in this offense can just go. Even if Rashad White goes down, Chase Edmonds is not going to be good enough to take on a role to be fantasy relevant. He could get 18 touches and run for 30 yards. And that's what you're going to see. If Rashad White gets injured, Chase Edmonds will have stat lines of like 16 for 35 or 16 for 42. And he might doink a touchdown every now and again. But it's not, my point is, it's not going to be good enough so you can drop Chase Edmonds.
What about Irv Smith? Can you drop Irv Smith?
You can drop him too. Second straight game with just 32% of routes. Tanner Hudson is leading this, and Tanner Hudson also had 7 targets in this game. He can go. You can cut Irv Smith. He is done. He is done. Finished. Finito. Goodbye.
Done.
Done.
What about the Steelers then? You've got something about their rushing yards here.
Yeah, they went nuts on the ground in this game. 36 rushes, 205 rushing yards. It looks like Jalen Warren has sneaked slightly ahead of Najee Harris, but they both scored decent touchdowns in this game. So, listen, I still think Matt Canada's a fraud. I still think that they should sack Matt Canada. I still think Matt Canada has absolutely no business being an offensive coordinator in the NFL. However, if they can run the ball this efficiently and this many times this well, it's going to change the dynamics of the offense. It means that Donta Johnson's going to have a bit more. I know he's banged up and didn't have a great stat line at the weekend. George Pickens, who's been moaning about his usage, might get a bit more play because if you can run the ball effectively, you're going to have to pay more attention to the run. It's going to open up passing lanes, and Pickens and Johnson are good enough to take advantage of that. So I've kind of been really low on this offense. I've really been high on Donta Johnson, but actually I've been quite low. Like I was really high on Najee Harris coming into this season, stupidly. But ultimately he's putting up enough numbers to make it okay. He's not going to have a high ceiling. He's going to be an RB2. Him and Warren are basically going to be low-end RB2s because they're going to cannibalize each other. But ultimately, if this team can continue to put up rushing numbers like that, then they're worth investing in.
Okay, let's talk about our boy Josh Downs. Obviously didn't practice all week. Didn't have a huge game, but...
Yeah, well, that was why, right? So, again, this is more for those that just sort of can't watch all the games, do a lot of box score scouting. They'll look at Josh Downs' game and go, oh, well, he's out of favor. And they're on bye this week, okay? So my point is he didn't practice all week. He only ran routes 43% of the time. He just clearly wasn't fit. He went out there. He gave it a go. But he did make a fantastic diving play on a like third down. It was quite late in the game. So ultimately, he went out there. He took one for the team. That's actually going to earn him more brownie points than he's going to lose. He's got a bye week this week to get healthy. My point is just don't give up on Josh Downs because he had a bad week. It was a bad week because he was injured.
James Cook, 45% of the snaps benched after a fumble.
That might explain why Dorsey got fired. You don't bench your lead running back because he has a fumble. So this is what's more ridiculous, right? So James Cook's fumble on Monday Night Football was his first fumble since his first snap as a pro. So his first snap as a pro was a fumble. He went 181 carries since without fumbling the football, and then he has a fumble and he gets benched. Why would you do that? If the guy was repeatedly fumbling or repeatedly making mistakes, I kind of get that. Bruce Arians was very harsh in this sort of scenario. But he benched him. I just don't get that. Like, it's not like the guy hasn't been reliable. It's not like the guy, he doesn't do it that often. Gone 180 yards.
How many fumbles has Josh Allen had in between those two fumbles?
Yeah, quite like exactly that. Like, it's just madness. Like, I don't get it. They got Joe Brady in now as an interim offensive coordinator. He looked good when he came back, James Cook. Was it a teaching, like, motivational exercise? It was stupid. I argue it probably cost him the game as well. So, yeah, don't bite your nose off to spite your face. It's just pointless, and that's what happened here in this case for me.
Yeah. Travis Etienne, obviously, they got, as we mentioned, got absolutely shellacked. But is there a slight downtrend here, or do you think it was just the pasting by the Niners?
It was just the pasting. Ultimately, he was down to 60% snap share, which was his first game, under 70%. But I think really the fact that they just got shellacked, I think they just went, we'll just take it. We'll put Tank Bigsby out there and we'll move on to another day, which is smart coaching. It's the right thing to do. Don't flog a dead horse.
Don't flog a dead horse. And then finally, let's talk some Noah Brown, a couple of big games.
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous games. 172 yards against the Bucs, 153 yards this week in a walk-off victory. First two career 100-yard games. But listen, Nico Collins is coming back, so this is going to impact quite significantly. My point is, if you're sitting there picking up Noah Brown thinking he's a league winner, let's just temper expectations down quite significantly. I'm not saying that he's not going to have productive games going forward, but effectively when Collins comes back into this attack, and you've got Collins and Dell, he's the third read. Now, third read in Houston with the amount they throw the ball is not a bad thing, but he's not putting up 150 and 170 yard games much likely for the rest of the season unless something else happens. So, if you caught on those breaks, and I had a couple of deep leagues where I started Brown and I caught in on those games, that's great. It's probably not going to happen again. So I'm just setting the expectation level. He is a borderline flex play moving forward for the rest of the season. There'll be matchups and games that it will suit, and there's matchups and games that it won't. But this week, with Nico Collins, not quite 100%, he's still on the injury report. You can probably roll him out again this week. Just don't expect that high ceiling anymore.
There you go. That is your statistical update for the Week 11 slate, Rush Nation. Anything else you want to mention or monitor, Murf, before we sign off for the week?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. Just that I'm not looking forward to the Buccaneers getting pummeled on Sky this week. Monday Night Football is going to be amazing. Eagles Chiefs. That should be a really, really good game. And no, I think ultimately follow the Patreon. We're having some great conversations and teams on there. Trade deadlines, get active. If you join the Patreon, I would definitely help as much as possible. I think there's a few people out there that will say I've helped them a bit this week with some trade advice and have made some good trades off the back of some of the advice I've given. So if you want some good trade advice for your trade deadline, join the Patreon. I will help you out as much as possible. If you do it over Twitter, I will try and get to them, but just be mindful. I am busy. I will always prioritize the Patreons over my Twitter feed. because they pay and they deserve it ultimately. And they catch me because I'm on my phone. And I can't say no to WhatsApp, and that's the difference.
There you go, Rush Nation. That is your Week 11 stats not the stats, the statistical watch list, shall we say. We don't know the stats yet, or we'd all be very, very rich men. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the Patreon over at patreon.com/5yard. There is a tier for just over £1 a month, which works out at about, I don't know, how many games did we say left? 7. It's about 20p a game, something like that. So not of the regular season, obviously. You can follow Murf on X at Murf_NFL. You can follow the podcast at 5yard rush. But that's about it, Murf, right? That's going to do it for this week's statistical stuffs.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's good. We've got 4 weeks of the regular season left. It's time to hustle. It's time to make some big moves, to be bold. Final piece of advice I could give to anybody this week is just make a big move. You'll regret not making it. But some will say you might regret making it, especially if there's injuries. But I definitely tell you that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, as the great Michael Jordan once said. So ultimately, take a big move. If you're trying to win championships, it takes big moves. Go all in on players if you can. If the situations arise, if you're contending in the league, make a big move. See what you can do. If you're not contending in the league, but you're on the outskirts, make a bigger move. Outwork your opponents, outwork your league. Try and bring home a ship, because that's how you're going to do it. Listening to shows like this is great. Picking up player trends and statistical trends is great. But ultimately, it's your strategic play and making a big move. And they're the ones that will help you pull off championships.
And that's why we're here, right? Let's get those ships. Let's fill the dockyard up. Once again, it's getting to that point in the season. Crunch time, baby. Until next week, Rush Nation, as always, don't forget, keep rushing.